Hi guys, it's Frankie from Frankie Tech. Good to see you guys again. And I'm here at the Forest in Mongkok. I guess this is the Xiaomi spot. And it's time for another Street Tech unboxing, baby. Anytime, anywhere, Frankie Street Tech, oh yeah. And I bring to you today a phone I'm very excited about. It's none other than the Xiaomi Mi A3. Oh yes. And let me show you the version that I got. It is the Mi A3 kind of gray version, 4GB RAM, 64 gigs ROM. And let's have a look at the phone now. Your first look on Frankie Tech of the Xiaomi Mi A3. There it is. And I'm very curious to take off this plastic because there's one thing I need answered immediately. But let's look at the specs right here of the Mi A3. 48 megapixel AI triple camera. So there is a triple camera on the back of this bad boy here. 4,030 milliamperes. So that's a full 1,030 milliamperes larger than the Mi A2. And you know, that's the question I really want to answer in this video, and obviously in my upcoming review and comparisons. Is this a worthy Mi A2 successor? But in terms of battery life, it definitely is. It supports 18 watt fast charging, fast in-screen fingerprint sensor. That is a major difference versus the Mi A2, which had it on the back, and Qualcomm Snapdragon 665, which on paper it should be a better chip than the Snapdragon 660. But we'll have a look. So there is the display, and let me put this down now right here, and let's remove this plastic together. And 1, 2, 3. There we go. Gonna put that aside there. Let's remove the plastic on the back. Let's see where I do. I'll do it from this edge here. 1, 2, 3. There it is, and there is the Mi A3 back. And this kind of gray is definitely kind of gray, but now let's turn it around. Let's see what this display looks like. I am having this initial reaction along with you guys. So here we go, 1, 2, 3. And let's go ahead and try the fingerprint scanner. And I haven't set that up yet. Actually, let me switch hands here with the video because I've set it up with the left finger. I'm left-handed, by the way, guys, if you were curious. So this should work. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's not very promising right there. But I will say, just from initial impressions, now there's one thing the elephant in the room here, we have to get out of the way. So this phone was just announced like yesterday or something like that, and I was really hyped about this phone. I love the Mi A2, and I think the thing when I kind of started seeing the comments on Twitter was about this display. And this is an AMOLED display, the first ever on a Mi A phone series here, a Mi A series phone. But there is one caveat to that, and that is that this is an HD plus display, not a full HD plus display. So I need just a minute here to look at this kind of close up and really look at it. And guys, I can tell you just from like my initial impressions of the display, it's almost like Xiaomi, it's almost like they picked a trade-off here. And while they've been able to include now an AMOLED display on this phone, the resolution of this phone, I can already tell you, is just not something that I'm gonna like. I mean, it's okay from like this distance, but once you get a little bit closer like that, and even closer like that, you can definitely start to see this kind of pixelation. Now, I have no problem with 720p displays, guys. 720p displays are great. They're fine, but I think if you have an RGB pixel matrix, then you can kind of get by with it. But as most AMOLED displays, this is a pentile dot matrix, and so the lines kind of like the text is a little bit more jaggy. But I will say, just kind of looking at the colors, at least, the colors do look very nice. Let's quickly talk about the design of this phone. So one thing about this phone that you need to know about is that this is pretty much a carbon copy in terms of the design of the Xiaomi CC9e. Now, I've reviewed the Xiaomi CC9 on my channel, and I will be comparing this phone to that one, but I do like this gray color. You know, it does feel premium in the hand. Let's look around the phone real quick. We have USB-C, very similar situations here. Volume rocker, we have on the top. They've reintroduced the headphone jack on the Mi A3 series, so that's a real positive thing. And perfect time, the sights and sounds of Hong Kong, to have a horn fest here. And there is an IR blaster on this phone, so there's quite a bit to like in terms of the design. I do wish that I'm gonna have to probably redo the fingerprint scanner here, because it was essentially done. I did it earlier when I had the plastic on the plastic on the screen. But let's talk about this display. 6.088 inch display, and I gotta say, it's probably the most underwhelming part of this phone. I'm looking at this pretty close here, guys. The pixelation is very obvious. I mean, it is not something that you will not it's not something that you will unnotice. I mean, it's very obvious. So even if you didn't even know anything about resolutions or anything, at least if you've been using a full HD display in 2019, which is, I think, a pretty typical thing to do, then you will definitely notice that this display is just not as crisp. The colors do pop, though. I will give it that. And the colors actually are gorgeous. They are beautiful. We have these inky blacks. Let's go into the camera app, and you kind of see, because the camera app really does show it to you here. Those inky blacks are very evident. So, trying to think of Xiaomi. I'm really trying to think of your thought process here for including such a low resolution AMOLED display on this phone. I'm kind of racking my brain about it, but let's go on here and talk about performance. Snapdragon 665. So this is the kind of, I guess, the updated Snapdragon 660, which was built on a 14 nanometer process. This is built on an 11 nanometer process. So it should be a little bit more, I guess, a bit more efficient. Combined with that battery life, should do really well as well. And the other thing I want to mention, this is running Android One. So Android One is the reason why you would want to pick up this phone. This is the Mi A series, is the only Android One kind of phone that Xiaomi releases, and I gotta say, at least in terms of interface, in terms of like the way you would use this feels like having a Pixel. It feels like having a Pixel, and that's a good thing. You being able to have your cards on the right. I am a huge fan of stock Android. I love it, and so that is a major bonus on having a phone like this. And just mentioning the bezels here, because I didn't mention the design, they are definitely a little bit bigger than the ones on the CC9, but you know what? They're not too bad. I don't mind them. They're not too bad at all. They're actually one of the better parts. And in terms of design, in terms of performance, I'll have to test it out, but those seem to be the better parts of the phone, despite the display. Looking at the speakers there, we have mic and a speaker. I don't think there's going to be dual speakers on this phone, pretty certain of that. And let's wrap up here with the classic Frankie Tech camera shot. I'll have to do more testing here, but it's nice to have. Look, we have a triple camera setup on this phone, and the price I got this phone for was 1,780 Hong Kong dollars. So that is, I'll be able to translate that in a later video for you guys, but you can do the math, around 1,800 Hong Kong dollars. So we're talking about 200, just a little over 200 US dollars, if I'm not mistaken. But let's do this classic Frankie Tech camera shot here on the Mi A3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that shutter was a little slow. Let's do that again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now let's enable HDR on. Enabling HDR on and AI mode, and there we go. So let's have a look at both of those shots, the non-HDR and the HDR modes. Okay, let's go to it. There we go. So that was the non-HDR mode. You can tell, I mean, colors look pretty good. Detail isn't the greatest though. I mean, this is the non-HDR, and then that's the HDR. So definitely a lot better there. And look, you can make out a lot of detail on this display. I'm not saying that you can. I'm not saying that, you know, this is a deal breaker, like 100% a deal breaker. It's interesting because Xiaomi here they've kind of gone one step forward and one step back with this display. One step forward is they've created and brought now an AMOLED display to a price point that is unheard of. At least for me, like I paid more for the Realme X, and that had an AMOLED display. This has an AMOLED display, and I paid like just over $1,700 for this. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But then they took a step back, and I don't know if 720p in 2019 on a 6-inch display of this size is manageable. I don't know if it's acceptable. I'm gonna need to test this phone further and really kind of understand if this is something that you can kind of get used to again, or is this something that is just a deal breaker through and through. So stay tuned for that, guys. I mean, it's other than that really. And Xiaomi, if this had just been a full HD panel, if you had to do something LCD, that's fine, you know, that would have been fine. But the fact that it's HD, I'm worried that a lot of people will hear that and it will just automatically be an issue. I need to test this further to give my final assessment. I'll say the colors look good, but the resolution is immediately noticeable. But stay tuned for that full video, guys. And that's it for this video. If you liked it, give me that thumbs up. And if you love the content of Frankie Tech, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for future updates. So this is the last phone I'm looking at, guys, before my trip to the UK. And I may be bringing this Mi A3 with me. I do love my stock Android, so hit me up in the comments there what you think of that idea. Anyway, stay tuned for the full review and comparison of this versus the Mi A2. Obviously, that's the major comparison I want to make. And this is where I leave you by saying, this is Frankie Tech signing off. Have a good one.